Once again, we're heading via Zoom to speak to someone that we've been wanting to speak to for the best part of the last couple of weeks, especially with so much business in stall mode, especially in Victoria, but also across Australia. She's the CEO of the Franchise Council of Australia. Her name is Mary Aldred. Welcome to The Informer.
Thanks for having me along, George.
Now, as the CEO, enormous responsibility, but you have a lifelong connection with small business. It started very early for you, this thing called responsibility and understanding how to make businesses, make a difference.
Absolutely. I come from a very proud small business family and actually left school at 15 to spend a couple of years working in mum and dad's business. It was an equestrian business. I loved dealing with customers and seeing all of the things that you see and learn working in a small business. And while I haven't gone on to run my own small business, it has given me a lifelong passion for supporting small businesses because I really strongly believe that healthy businesses sustain healthy communities and that helps everybody.
There's no doubt about that. They make an enormous contribution. Now, in this current state of this so-called COVID economy, you've had a lot of time to think, as have many of the franchise holders. How do we get through this current lockdown?
Well, I think one of the big stories at the moment is around innovation, which just means how do we adapt, and the scale and pace of that innovation and need to change has been more rapid than ever. We're in, I think, the biggest economic catastrophe, chaos that any of us have ever lived through at the moment, and small businesses particularly are doing it very, very hard. But what I've also seen is some amazing resilience and also the ability of small business to be able to pivot to new supply chains, to be really innovative in their workforce management. We've seen some examples, McDonald's and Pizza Hut now selling toothpaste and milk and bread to vulnerable customers that might not have been able to go out in lockdown. We've seen home repairs, small businesses working with larger companies like Bunnings on home delivery. So there's been some really fantastic innovation shown as well through this time.
Yeah, you talk about pivoting, which is terrific, this ability to adapt, but that's all about also adding costs to a host of businesses that haven't been allowed to do business, which is a really difficult time. I want to know, is the model that we once used to work with and thought would be the one forever, is that broken? Do we need to look at something brand new going forward?
Well, I look at agriculture and farming as a great example here. Farming used to be a sort of handed down, seat of your pants approach to farming, and now it's very high tech. It's data driven. You've got some really serious embedded processes in the way people go about agriculture and farming. And I think that's the same for any small business. You can't just hang your shingle out and expect people to come and buy your coffee. You've got to have sales targets. You've got to have marketing, a proven way of doing things. I think franchising provides a really good model in that respect. And I think, where there's been some good processes in place already, that has, as well as I think having to make hard early decisions through this pandemic for businesses, that has held a lot of those businesses in enough stead to get through this really tough time.
In the to and fro of doing business, you have to talk to banks, you have to talk to government, you have to talk to councils, you have to also talk to your landlords. How have your franchise members been finding their way through? And have people been listening? Has there been some flexibility, some sharing of the risks shown?
I think it's a great question, and it's certainly a role that we try to take a lead on, because as you would appreciate, running your own small business, you've got to be head of marketing, head of IT, head of HR, and deliver first-class products and services to your customers. So, people can get a bit time poor on dealing with all of those things, and that's certainly where we try and play a role. It depends on which participant in the economy you're looking to for examples. I think we've seen with banks, energy companies, they've been proactive through this and said to their customers, if you're struggling, come and talk to us. We'll try and help you through this. Landlords commercial leasing arrangements, that was a really big issue for small business in the retail sector, and about 40% of franchising's in retail. So a big issue before we hit COVID, and it's become an even bigger issue through COVID. And, where you've got businesses that are 80, 90% down on turnover, or in a food court where they just can't operate at the moment, their bank might be providing them with relief on their business loans, their energy companies stepping in to help. But too often we've seen landlords through this using really aggressive tactics and not weathering, or not contributing their share of the same amount of sacrifice that everybody else is putting in at the moment.
The thing that's extraordinary there is if it was because your business wasn't good enough, you could understand the challenges. But all of this has been induced by government decisions. Federal and state governments have all come to the party to cope with a major health emergency, not only across Australia but around the world. So all of this is man-made or made by people. The challenge now is I can't believe that those very same landlords, for example, mate, look at the businesses and your franchise holders at the airports who are getting absolutely traumatised by the lack of business. I can't imagine how they're feeling, how they're coping. Their mental health the anxiety levels must be through the roof.
Yeah, mental health is a massive issue at the moment. We're doing some work with Beyond Blue and some other mental health service providers to really try and step in and help. But that is, I'm having conversations about mental health at the moment with people that I've never had those types of conversations with. So I think it's good that people are talking about it, but it really is one of the most significant challenges that we've got at the moment. I was talking to a little salad bar deli business a couple of weeks ago. Their whole takings for the Monday were $54. And yet, if you look at their staff and outgoings, you're probably looking at $1,500 a day just to open their doors. So when you've got that kind of financial pressure, and some, like the banks and energy companies and others, trying to do what they can, but others like commercial landlords not providing some kind of assistance, that's when we need to have a serious conversation about everybody contributing.
Mary Aldred, what do you think they could do? What would you like to see done? How do we find some common ground, some sharing of the risk as we touched on earlier? Where do we start the conversation? Is it to do with rents? Yeah. Is it a case of maybe looking at turnover? I mean, because these fixed business costs are not going anywhere. I mean, whether you're open or closed, you're still got to pay them. So how do we start the conversation to make things more equitable and fairer, and also add another layer of this obligation at the moment? Everyone's talking we can defer it. Deferring costs is not going to help a crippling business that's on its knees, is it?
No, and I think I'd go back to, when the Prime Minister announced the National Leasing Code of Conduct principles, he said tenants and landlords need to sit down and negotiate in good faith. And I think that good faith principle is where you've got to start. So not sending letters to small business tenants, demanding non-disclosure agreements be signed just to sit down and have a discussion with them about leasing, not demanding year on year of financial red tape and burden to stonewall and use that as a negotiating tactic. So it's got to be in good faith. And I think your point about deferring is a really good one, because there's so many small businesses at the moment just struggling to keep their head above water. And if we could just get to the stage where we get foot traffic, whether it's through the CBD again or in those food courts, get that retail foot traffic moving through, give them a chance to run the small business, the majority of whom are really good small businesses. They're great at what they do. It's no fault of their own that we're in a depressed economic environment and through government restrictions they can't operate. So give them a crack at getting back on their feet, but don't then whack them with a huge bill that they're going to cop if we go down that deferral rate. And so I think, good faith and being reasonable is where we need to be at the starting line.
I never imagined that the word moratorium would be one I looked askance at and go, you can't think moratorium. It's about making those changes now. wipe that or waive that debt as much as possible and allow them to stand up, because many of them, as you touched on earlier, they're running on fumes. We're talking to major business entities that we know. I know Shane Delia. I've talked to friends of ours who've done as much pivoting as you can possibly do, but they still need to see some acknowledgement on the other side of the table, whether it's council, whether it's your bank, whether it's your landlord or whatever, that there is, as you touched on earlier, common ground and a goodwill.
Absolutely. And I often think, small business is the canary in the cage as far as the broader economy is travelling. And so, we're going through very rapid change right now. People are buying, for example, more and more online. The shopping centre landlords, where those shopping centre complexes were once a place to shop and do your grocery shopping, that's changed dramatically in the last couple of years to almost be, entertainment complexes or venues. Now, that's not going to go back to the same type of normal once we get through this pandemic. Those shopping centre complexes and high street mall strips are going to be relying on small businesses to be sustainable and profitable into the future. So giving them a shot at having a go and getting back to trading right now, rather than crippling them and just, having a millstone around their neck that they can't progress with, is not good for small business, but it's also not good for the future sustainability of landlords either.
You touch on the future. Christmas is coming. And I know that means that there'll be schools out, there'll be young boys and girls, young men and women looking for a part-time job, looking to start a job. And of course, where many of us have started doing whatever we've done to make a few dollars on the side, especially in our formative years, they were the small businesses, the franchises that would put their hands up and say, we need the assistance, we need staff. What are we going to see? What are we going to do? We need jobs, and we need more jobs and jobs. I think the first three things we need to go forward is jobs, jobs and jobs, because they bring with it confidence, they bring, of course, demand, and the cycle starts to move and shift. Is that what you want to hear? Is that what you want to see? Our ability for those businesses to offer jobs?
Small businesses are so important at giving young people their first shot at a job. My sister's first job was in a baker's delight, where she learnt processes and teamwork and serving customers and problem solving. It sets them up for life with really important skills and experience. And if we don't have a retail sector, if we don't have a vibrant small business sector, it's young people that lose out as well. So I think that's the first point. CBD is changing dramatically. So any international CBD like Melbourne, Sydney, other cities, that retail environment interacts so critically with our international tourism, international students, the cultural setting of a city, the security, all of those things interact. And if people are not going back, for example, to the same types or the same density of commercial office space, they're not out shopping at lunchtime, that's going to have a really big flow-on impact. So I think, in Melbourne at the moment, we've got to look at, well, we've lost the footy to Brisbane, and we're not going to have the same kind of spring racing carnival. But what more can we do? How can we innovate? We've got the banks of the river, we've got Fed Square. How could we entice people back into the CBD to give those retail outlets a shot at having some kind of new normal Christmas trading period? Because at the moment, that's what retailers are absolutely hanging out for, to be able to have some semblance of getting back on track through that Christmas retail trade.
Well, I hear you. Let's hope everyone else is listening, especially those people who are in a position to make a difference. Mary Aldred, thank you very much for joining us. CEO of the Franchise Council of Australia. Mary Aldred has joined us to take us through some of the challenges facing the franchise members. How many of them are there across Australia, Mary?
It's a very big sector, and in fact, I still get surprised at businesses that I didn't know were franchised that are franchised. So it's about a $190 billion industry. There's around 1,300 brands, business brands in Australia, and they underpin about 94,000 individual business outlets, and it employs about 540 100,000 Australian jobs. So I think, we need to give the majority of 95% of franchisees are small businesses, and the majority of franchisors are also small businesses. So we need to give them every shot at having a go, because the rest of Australia is going to be looking to small business, to franchising, to retail, to get us back onto that path to recovery.
I hear. And by the way, happy anniversary to Baker's Delight. I believe, is it 20 years since they started?
It would be just about. It's an amazing success story, a great family business, and they're fantastic contributors to their local community as well. I've seen so many of their franchisees raise money for women's shelters, for a whole range of community organisations, and I think that speaks more broadly to the impact that small business owners have in their local communities, contributing to local initiatives.
Mary Aldred, thank you once again for joining us. All the best.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, George. Great to be with you.